All right, I just want to thank everyone for coming along to another iMoot session. This one we have Julian Davis, who's presenting on understanding student behaviour in Moodle about learning analytics. And just on behalf of the iMoot team, Julian, just want to thank you for your time and looking forward to your presentation. Yes.
No worries. Thanks, Shane. What I might do is first off is just if everyone's happy that they've seen my face, I might just turn off my webcam now just for bandwidth reasons. Okay, there we go. Okay, so first off, just to introduce myself, as Shane said, my name's Julian. I work for a company called ACTE, which is based in Brisbane. And we have a student base of around about 14,000 students. And a lot of those, probably around about 66 to 70% of those are online. My background actually stems into web development and app development before moving into education around about 8 years ago. And I've taken my knowledge of what I have with technology and brought it together with adult learning. And I'm using those together to try and get the best out of what we can with adults and help adult learners because it's very, very different to what we have in school. So one of the things that we looked at and one of the problems that we have is predominantly for our tutors. So we have a lot of tutors that are based all over Australia and they can have a student cohort of up to around about 50 to 80 students at any one time, delivering over multiple disciplines. We deliver across business, IT, counselling, youth work, graphic design, and more recently we've moved into beauty, but that's more of a classroom-based activity. All of our students have to use Moodle to submit any of their assessments, but there was no way of a tutor actually being able to see what their students were doing. We do have a student record system, but it doesn't. It does show some sort of progression, but it's only based on assessment. There's no actual way of seeing whether a student had logged in, where they were going and what they were doing. I know that there's log files within Moodle, but these can be quite complicated for people that are not tech savvy and are just use Moodle for what it's actually worth. So how do you know what your students are actually doing in your LMS? And this was a problem that we came up with. And being an ex-tutor as well, I kind of didn't quite know whether my students were accessing any of the learning materials, whether they were downloading anything, whether they were using any of the resources. So we needed to come up with some sort of idea that would allow the students, allow the tutor, sorry, to be able to see what the students are doing. So yeah, like I said, we had around about 60 to 70% of our students are online. So what we did was went and looked at a product called Piwik. Now, Piwik is an open source analytical tool. We don't host it ourselves. It's actually hosted as a software as a service. It has a really, really simple interface, scheduled reports, and custom variables. Now, the custom variables is the big one. And I know that Google allows this as well, but Piwik just gave us that added security that we knew where it was and we knew where the data was, and we had access to the database if we actually needed to. The custom variables allow us to pass more information in per record that gets sent to Piwik. So it allows us to send items like our student ID number that we use for our internal references. It allows us to also send where the student was from, what machine they're looking at, who their tutor is, what course they're studying. But the big one is the student user ID that comes out of Moodle. This then allows us to link that back to the student. So, and later on, I'll give a bit of a demo on how it's actually used, and we can link it back to the tutor as well. So the tutor is able to go in and see a list of their students, all because we have that ID linked. More recently, we've actually started to incorporate a product called Learning Locker. So I don't know if anybody's heard of Learning Locker before, but it's what they call a learning record store. It's open source, very easy to configure. It allows us to pass the X API, which is also called the Tin Can API, statements through to the learning locker and store them and be able to generate reports and that kind of stuff. But we actually want it to be in one single place for tutors to be able to look at. So we use this to capture formative assessments to actually identify whether the student's actually engaging in any of the learning materials. And I'll give you a demo of this. We're actually using a product called H5P, which I see that there's actually a presentation on that a little bit later on today, which I highly recommend that most of you go and have a look at if you've not looked at it before. H5P is an amazing new product and is so easy to use and is a game changer as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so to give you an idea of what type of data that we actually capture and what we do with it, within Piwik, we look at the last time they accessed Moodle. We look at their device and their browser. Now, this might not sound important. However, if a student is complaining that they can't actually see something or they can't engage in something, it could be quite possible that the browser that they have may not support what we're doing. We do know that Internet Explorer can have some predominant problems with some things, and if we know this information and the student's not tech savvy, we can use that to our advantage to point them to another browser, for example. It's also quite handy for the technical faculties, the IT and web development, to make sure that they are actually using the right browser. So we can go in there and it gives us a history of the browsers and the devices they're using. It also allows us to know whether people are using mobile devices, which is pretty important these days. We can see on a percentage basis how much time they're actually using on a tablet compared to using on a desktop or a laptop. So the tutor can target their learning they're actually using and the device they're using. The pages, which is our unit. So the way we structure our courses is they'll have a course with a whole bunch of units inside. Those units are only open as the course progresses. So from that, we can actually see what pages or what units they're actually accessing and how many times they're accessing it and on what particular day they're accessing it. We have active days as well. This is a bit of a calculation that we do. This calculation has been proven to be very handy in the sense that we can see what day is the most active that a student is working on. In our student record system, we may have, it says that best to contact me on a Tuesday, for example, for our distance tutors. But when we go in and have a look at the student analytics, we can see that actually Saturday is their most active day. So we can then go back to the tutor and say, well, it seems to me that you're more active on a Saturday. So let's look at assigning you an after hours tutor that can help you on a Saturday and help you progress through your course. We also look at downloads as well. It can be anything from a resource that they've downloaded, a student learner guide, an assessment guide, all those kinds of things we can actually see if they've downloaded and how many times they've downloaded. What I haven't added on there, which is something that we've recently added, is we've added outlinks. So within our particular units and the way they're structured, we have external resources links. So it might be to another website. We can actually track that and we can see whether they're actually going out to that website or not, all from a simple one-place interface. With Learning Locker, the main four things that we actually look at is how the student has interacted with that particular learning tool or learning object. We look at whether they've interacted with it, whether they've attempted anything, whether they've answered and whether they've completed it. These are all standard verbs within the X API standard. So by using these, we get a great idea, and this is a very new feature that we're doing. We haven't quite got it up yet, but the demo that I've got will give you an idea of where we're heading with it. And it gives the tutor an even better understanding of where the student's going and whether they are actually engaging with the learning. And it's really good I know from experience that a student will dive straight into an assessment. And you've probably experienced that yourself, where particularly in an online environment where they're not monitored, they might get their first package and they get their assessment and then they go bang straight into the assessment and just start learning for the assessment, and they don't really learn that much. by us having this engagement through Learning Locker, we're actually able to see whether they are engaging in the online learning or not, which is quite a powerful tool. Quite a powerful tool. Okay, so what good is this data? Like I've been talking about, we can understand what our students are doing now. So it creates a lot more transparency and allows the tutors to not second guess what their students are doing. We can target a student's most active day. This is quite critical, I believe, from a distance learning perspective, particularly if we can start to generate a pattern of how the student is accessing the LMS, and you can start to see over a period of time. This particular tool only captures the last 12 weeks. It actually captures everything, but we only allow up to 12 weeks, and that's purely from a caching and a loading perspective. But you would be able to get a decent pattern of how the student's engaging over a 12-week period. It allows for improved student engagement. Once the tutor knows what the student's doing and how they're engaging and interacting with the LMS, that's a big relationship improver between the student and the tutor as well. We can review what resources are being accessed. So by downloading them, we don't know whether they're actually engaging with them because generally most of them are just PDFs. But by having them there, being able to download them, at least we can use that as a reference. We can also, as I said, the browsers and identify learning engagement. And that's the new one that we're getting with the introduction of Learning Locker. So for the techies, how did we develop this? So we made it a local plugin. And the reason we made it a local plugin is we've learned very hard, we've learned through the hard way that when we go to upgrade Moodle, keeping it a local plugin, it actually retains everything that's there and we don't lose any data. We do search based on our custom student ID and we have a very, very rich client-driven interface. We had to make it modern, quick and easy to use for our tutors. Some of our tutors are not tech savvy at all. They may have come from an industry, for example, like counseling, for example, where they may not necessarily have a lot of engagement with computers. Now that they're a tutor and delivering distance, we needed to make it simple enough for everybody to understand the simple 2-click rule that you need to be able to get something within 2 clicks. It does inherit, because it is a local plugin, we can inherit the permissions through Moodle, which we have done, and I'll demonstrate how we're using that. Like I said, we cache the data. We cache the data for 24 hours, so it's not real time in the true sense of the word. We do cache that, and that's purely to prevent a load coming up on the server, particularly the P-Week server on the other end. And it's all open source JS. I know I'm going to get asked the question: is this going to be available eventually? Because it is customized for us, we are looking at doing a scaled down version, which would allow you to plug into your own P-Week or plug into your own LRS to bring back data as well. So that's something that myself and my developer are working on. Slightly more complicated. No, it's not complicated at all. You can see here that in the middle we have our Moodle and we have our 2 instances of P-Week, which is a software as a service, which is actually hosted by P-Week, and our Learning Record Store, which is hosted by us. Both of these are over SSL and secure, so the data that gets passed is quite safe. A student will log in and engage in Moodle, and they won't even know that any of this data is being sent. It's very, very seamless. A tutor can log in and we'll go to the local plugin that we have called Student Analytics, and they'll be able to go in and have a look at what the student's actually doing. So what I want to take you through now, and hopefully this is going to work. I've not done this before, so fingers crossed it's going to work. I'm just going to take you through 2 screens. I've got one set up as a student, and I've got one set up as myself, who's an admin, who'll be able to give you a demonstration of the plugin. Okay, just give me a second to open up shared screen and we'll see how we go. that work? Yeah. Okay, if I can over here. Okay, can I just ask, can you see the two screens now? No. Oh, yep. Awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so on the left-hand side, what I have here is my student. This is my student view in our current environment. The name of my student is called Johnny Appleseed. Anyone who's Apple will understand what we've done there. So this is what they would generally see. I've set up a course demo here. So this is one of our demo courses that we have. And what I've done is I've set up a H5P, a very, very quick H5P this morning, based on a video that I created, and we start playing it. I don't know if anyone has seen H5P before. This is very cool. Load. Here we go. Wait for this dot to come up. This dot will come up and it will now actually ask a question of this particular person, and select as many as needed. They're all motivated. We can check. And I've got it correct. Fantastic. I can also go back to my course demo if I needed to. This is how we've set up our resources within a course. We can see here that we have a link. I can link out to a particular link. It doesn't actually go anywhere. Any video resources, we've linked this up with Vimeo, so I could go in Vimeo. So the student is just going to go through their normal as if they were going through a unit. They'll be none the wiser as if they were going through it. Adet can't see my screen. Just continue. Don't need to offend Adet, I'll just continue. Okay, I'm going to bring up my, this is where the analytics come into it. So I'm now logged in as as myself. We've introduced a new menu up here, which we've called Student Analytics. Okay, so this will give us a list of all our students that we currently have. As you can see there, I've been assigned Johnny Appleseed. This would have up to 3 columns of students, understanding that you could possibly have up to 80 students. So we would have 3 columns of students. Just for this demo, I've just got the 1 student. Depending on our role, and I talked about earlier how we have different roles within Moodle, and we inherit the roles. This Smart ID, Smart is the name of our custom built student record system. And within here, they all have a particular ID. If you are a campus manager or a faculty leader or some sort and you needed to look at a particular student, you have the ability to enter in their student ID from their Smart ID and be able to go in and see the student. So if I click on Johnny Appleseed, it will bring up our analytics. Across the top, by default, nothing will load, and that is done by design. That is done because we didn't want to load anything straight away due to resources and loading. So the first thing we have is formative assessments, a student summary. We can show up to 12 weeks. By default, we show 4 weeks, and we can show the last 4 weeks for any outlinks, pages, or downloads. First thing I'd like to show you is the student summary. So within our student summary, we can actually see that this particular person has had 11 downloads. They have viewed 220 pages. So they've viewed quite a lot of pages, but they haven't done much downloading. Because this is a test student, we can see when they were first logged in and when they last logged in. This is quite important if we need to see whether the student's actually engaging or not. The details about the last visit, this will tell them where they're from, what operating system they're using, what browser, what IP, and whereabouts they're from. As you can see, this is my local one. And because I'm on a Mac, we can see that I'm doing it on a desktop, and I have Mac 10.12 running on this one. If they were using multiple devices, this would give you a percentage range of the different types of devices and how long they're actually spending on each device. Very handy for the tutor to understand what it is and what tools and devices they're actually using, particularly if they're chopping and changing between any. It's also very beneficial for us in the e-learning team to understand what devices are being used, so we can actually target and ensure that what we're developing and what we're designing is actually targeting. It's actually going to work for the most amount of devices that we have. I'm going to select just for the last week, and the first thing I'll show you is the outlinks. As you can see there, November 4th, it's told me that there's 2 outlinks were recorded for this day. Selecting details, I can see where this particular person went. Unfortunately, one of the downsides of Piwik is it doesn't actually capture the entire address, it just captures the domain. So we may need to work on this a little bit more to identify what unit it was that it actually came from, so we know which link it is that they're clicking on. These as well, clicking on them will take you through to the actual page in question. Same again, on the 2nd, we can see they visited Google. We do use lynda.com for some of our resources and YouTube as well. Looking at our pages screen. Okay, so over the last 2 days, this particular person, Johnny Appleseed, has been very, very active. On November the 2nd, he visited the homepage 107 times. That was more than likely me doing a lot of testing and refreshing. But as we can see, these are all the courses that this particular student has looked at and the pages. We know you're familiar with VET in Australia and how courses and units are named. Tutors will be aware of what the actual course is and what the unit is. So they're able to see whether they're actually visiting those units and on what particular day. The chart at the top gives us a breakdown of the pages viewed over a particular day. Hovering will tell us on November the 2nd that they were at 145 pages on that particular day. So we can see that that was quite an engaging day for the student. And then the next day, or the 4th, they looked at 48 different pages. We scroll down to the bottom. This is one of the critical parts. As it's over a 4-week period, if we were to do this over a 12-week period, it would give us a much better overview. But we can see that a Wednesday is the most active day for this particular student. Once again, we can look at Friday, and Friday is quite low. So from this, we can derive that the student's busiest day, or the most active day that they're involved in the LMS, is actually a Wednesday. So we can now, the tutor can take this information and they can arrange with the student, whether it be a Skype session or a phone or whatever the session may be, to actually arrange to engage with the student on that particular day. Like I said, they may have inside their particular record to say, no, contact me on a Saturday because that's the best. Well, we can see from here that Saturdays and Sundays are clearly, they're out playing cricket with the boys. If I look at downloads, will go away and give us a very similar pattern to what we actually had. Here we can look at downloads for each particular day, and it picks up the name of the document that's actually being downloaded. Tutors are familiar with the name of what the documents are, so by looking at these they can see that, okay, well, they've downloaded the guidelines for consumer protection twice. Why have they downloaded it twice? Was there a problem? So from this, the tutor can then go back and say, hey, how are you going with those consumer protection for e-commerce? So from that particular thing, it's quite important the tutor can actually see and contact them and see if there's any problem that they're actually having with that particular um, product resource. It may be that the student downloaded it accidentally twice, dog ate the USB stick, so they weren't actually able to find it, so they're able to go back on and open it again. Our newest addition to this particular one is our formative assessment. So we are still working on this, so this is a first look for you guys who haven't seen this. This is new that we've been developing in the last couple of weeks. We are looking at creating a filter across the top where we can do a search and a filter by the different things that are actually coming back from us, because as you can see, it can get quite complicated. It's very, very simple. It gives us the date. It gives us the course that they actually came from, and we've made this clickable so the student can click on it and take you through. If I click on it, it's going to give me that because it's broken and it's still a demo. Every demo's got to have a broken part. If you recall, we answered some questions and we interacted with a video for H5P. And here you can see that we've started to attempt it, then we've interacted with it. They were the 4 selections that we actually made. And then when we clicked on check, it answered it. So from this, we can actually see that the student has engaged in formative assessment within that particular unit. We are looking at trying to get more information out of this and filter this so it is more meaningful for the tutors. And as we need to have more and more formative assessments happening, we can build on this. So once again, the student gets, the tutor gets visibility of what the student's actually doing, and it gives it transparency. What we haven't done with this yet is this actually pulls back everything. We're not incorporating the last week or anything like that. We will be having filters at the top. Will allow you to actually filter the table to see what it is that the student's actually doing. So it brings up about 50 or 60 records at any one time. It does capture quite a lot. Tin Can API is very new for us, but we are trying to utilize it as best we can to pull out the most amount of information. From here, we can go back to our students. All tutors have access to this, and what it'll do is it'll bring up a list of their students. So at any time, they can go in and have a look at what their students are doing. I do tend to walk around the branch where I am. We do have upstairs, we do have some distance tutors, and I have seen printouts of the actual student summary page. And tutors are flicking through that particular page, looking at what the students are doing and then engaging with the students. So it's been very well adopted. We don't have a lot of training on it because we try to make it as simple as possible. We do have some tutors will come back to us and say, hey, what does this mean? What does this mean? And we're able to guide them in the right direction. We do have some little built-in help here to help the students, to help the tutors. But generally, most of them pick it up quite quickly, which is good because that's the way we wanted to design it. Okay, if I bring this one back across. Questions. So, I'm really ahead of time, but that's basically what our plugin is. Our tutors have been quite receptive to it now that they have transparency of what the students are actually doing. They do have some students that are great and just go along, but now they can actually see whether a student is struggling or not. There are possibilities that we could include more data from the Moodle logs. Because of the way we've designed the system, we can have multiple systems coming into the one plugin and just present it in an easy to use interface that the tutors can use. Yeah, I'm much earlier than what I thought I would be. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? definitely let the community know once we've developed what I'll call the light version of it when it's available and up on the Moodle repository. We haven't. I've never put anything up on the Moodle repository before. I've developed some plugins before, so we'll see what the process is to get them up there, and then make it available to the wider audience. It would be really good if eventually we could get it into Google Analytics as well. There may be some additional information we can get, but it does base a lot on the student ID that comes from Moodle. Thanks, Trish. Appreciate your comments.
Hi, Julian. This is Kim from the iMoot team, and I'd like to thank you for your presentation. That was very informative. So do you have anybody else have any questions?
Our Learning Locker is run, we host it internally. So we do have it on site. We use Amazon Web Services. So it is hosted up in the cloud, and we're currently going through the security process of SSL and pushing it through. So everything will be running through SSL. You can host it in the cloud. There's no reason why you couldn't, as long as you've got access to the administration side of it, where you're able to get what they call the endpoint and the username and password, which is generally an MD5 key. As long as you've got access to those, there's a settings feature within it that will be able to connect you through to that straight away. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate your comments. Not as yet, no. I assume you're referring to the Moodle data. No, not yet. We're still currently just using the Piwik and Learning Locker, but definitely look at if there's any other benefit to what we could actually get out of the log files that will incorporate those as well. We're just building on it, and it's becoming quite bigger. The more we think about it, the more we can access the data, and the more informative data that we can get that's going to be beneficial, then we'll definitely look at adding it in. But since we developed this back in July, August. So since then, we've now incorporated Learning Locker. So we are stepping up and stepping through. So yeah, highly probable that we'll incorporate other data sources as well. Absolutely, absolutely. The more you give them, the more they want. Yes, yes, absolutely. Thanks, Trish. HP5 is pretty good. It's pretty good. I'll be looking forward to the session that's coming up a little later on H5P. Yep.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining. Any other questions before I turn the recording off? And Julian, on behalf of the iMoot team, I thank you again for the presentation. It was quite informative.
Thank you very much.